I'd like you to consider that the person standing here is a representative of the lady that's actually not here with us, who would have really wanted to be here, but was unable to come, and that's Fidelity. So she sends her love, she sends her laughter, she sends her vibe, and she says I should do a good job at representing her. I don't know how well I'll do that. If I don't do a good job, don't mention it. Just clap your hands after, and we continue. Right, so I'd like us to, as a process of reflecting on the discussions that we've been having this morning on the nexus between gender, debt, and social justice, to think of a document that I would want us to endorse today, and that is called the Maputo Manifesto. So a background to this manifesto. Last year, AfCoDD hosted the 4th edition of one of our flagship events called the African Conference on Debt and Development, AfCoDD, and it was held in Maputo, hence the name Maputo Manifesto. And at this conference, the theme was Africa's debt crisis, focusing on Pan-African feminist perspectives and alternatives. And I'm glad that the discussions from yesterday, part of which from Jewel, as well as the other ladies that were here today, were speaking mostly about what was discussed during the conference. So there are a number of short-term actions that were aimed at achieving during that conference. And so one of them is gender-specific research on policies and practicing impeding the advancement of women. We spoke about the political aspect, we spoke about the economic aspect, and then we also delved into the social aspect when we were discussing during the earlier on sessions, right? And the second one was campaigning to abolish laws and cultural practices that propel gender inequalities. Some examples were given, and one of them being that in a household where there is very little school fees funds available, it is usually the boy child that is prioritized over the girl child. And so those are some of the cultural norms that we would want to abolish, to say women and girl children should also be prioritized. And then the third one was to ensure global engagement and a transformative agenda. That is to say, the agenda of feminism, the agenda of bridging the gap of gender inequality should actually have a concrete pathway on what to achieve, how to achieve it, and when to achieve it, including evaluating the processes that we have already started engaging in. And the last one was to propose and implement a measurable action plan. This is now the part where we walk the talk. We stand here, we sit here, we discuss issues of social injustice, we discuss issues of the girl child being abused, exploited, earning a little wage compared to the male counterpart. But what is the walk that is following that talk? And so that was what the conference was about, which is also part of what was discussed today. So as part of launching the Maputo Manifesto, there is a commitment that we want to make to adopt a feminist lens on debt and development, the nexus between gender, debt, gender equality, and social justice, to understand this. Now, as journalists, I remember Sharon, when she was speaking, said the power of journalism is what we report and how we report it. And so this is where it comes. As journalists, what are you reporting regarding the nexus? What are you reporting regarding gender equality, social justice? What role are you playing to commit yourself to reporting in such a way that influences and inspires changes in your countries? And so there are a number of issues that were highlighted in the manifesto that we want to delve into. Firstly, among many others, are cuts in budget allocation for education, health, and public investment. We all know that prioritizing debt repayments has a negative impact, significant negative impact on education, on health, and investment in social services, and the girl child suffers the most. Do we all remember Faith from yesterday's presentation by Jewel? Yes, we all have that one faith or two or thousands in our countries, and that faith has been denied one of those three, if not all those three, because of debt and because of prioritizing debt repayment. The second challenge is long-term underspending on education, which has resulted in high illiteracy rates. So when the girl child is not prioritized over the boy child, she's left to drop out of school and is illiterate. Now imagine in other countries, this girl can be as young as 6 years old. So imagine if a 6-year-old who has barely learned how to write, how to read, how do we expect her to even understand what we are saying, to even understand that there are women in this room who are representing her? And so that is the rate of illiteracy that is negatively impacting us. Aline even mentioned about how the rural girl is who is predominantly affected. And a few of us here are actually privileged. The average African woman is in the rural areas without access to any form of media, without access to phone, without access to education, good health. And so because of that, they don't know that they don't even know that they are not represented and that their rights have not been fully given to them. And there are also early marriages, you know, as young as 9 years old, you know, in our countries. Some countries have that, and other countries, a lady will start a family as young as 13 years old. What does that child know? You know, and that is a way in which we have just objectified women to be those that give birth and get married and it ends there. Whereas the male counterpart can go as far as master's degrees, PhDs. Have we never thought to give the same opportunity to the girl child to see how far she can go? And the other challenge we had is austerity measures, which have affected access for women to shelter, counseling, and legal aid, especially in the context of domestic and gender-based violence. In that case, a lot of, how many women have heard of other women that have not been able to leave domestic violence environments because they are unable to? Because they have nowhere else to go, because they can't afford to, or because they don't even know how to be treated better, right? So this is another impact of austerity measures caused by high debt on women. The other issue is exclusion from financial allocations. How many here have bank accounts? How many women have bank accounts? Now, if I tell you, you are the very few privileged 37% of women that have bank accounts in Africa. The rest do not have that. So you can apply for a loan for your business, you can apply for credit facility, and you will get it. But the average woman does not have that opportunity. So already when we sit here, we are at a higher privilege as women than the average African woman. The other issue is the lack of gender-sensitive budgeting and data on women's economic contributions. Now, most African economies are run by the informal sector. And in that informal sector, 90% are women. So, who is paying indirect taxes? Who is providing revenue for governments? Through money transaction taxes, through VAT, and through other regressive indirect taxes. It is the women. But is that translating to the services that women are getting? Is that translating to the social protection that women are getting? Our economies and the face of the average rural woman shows that it is not translating. She is giving more than she is getting. And we have to stand and say, at least give us something. But we cannot stand and say, we are giving this, we are spending so much in VAT, we are spending so much in money transaction taxes. Our contributions are covered by the fact that we are in the informal sector. The other issue is outdated post-World War II global financial architecture. Honorable Chabalala mentioned it yesterday, that the industrialized countries set up financial systems so that they can extract money from Africa and develop their countries. And that system is still present to this day. It has been outdated and has not evolved to consider the development of African countries. And so we are left with debt, and so we are left with unfavorable loan conditions because that system has always been pro-global North. So these are the key recommendations on policy proposals that the manifesto wishes to establish. Firstly, we need to invest in women's leadership and recognize their stories and contributions. Secondly, women should continue to occupy space and access more resources to tell their stories. This is done so that we avoid the political and economic systems based on male-dominated frameworks. Thirdly, we need to increase women's representation in political and economic decision-making, especially on issues on debt and development. Imagine this. A cabinet of ministers has about 17 ministers, and 10 of them are women. But the Minister of Finance is male. The Minister of Infrastructure and Development is male. The Minister of Education is male. The Minister of Health and Child Welfare is male. And then the rest are women. Do we really have representation in the places of decision making? If the president is going to negotiate on a contract and his advisors are men, do we really have a leadership or decisive position in the country? No, we don't. So it's not about just saying, let's have women represent us. Let's put them in positions where they actually change the trajectory of decisions. We also need to have inclusive electoral systems and political parties. If a political party and every constituency and every ward has a male representation for an MP or for a councillor, where do women's voices come through? How are women heard? Can a man truly represent the average woman's issues? Can they voice their opinions? No. But we say if a campaign party has 500 women who help around with logistics, we are very proud to say, oh, my team has 115 women out of 120, and yet they are those that don't make decisions, that don't change the trajectory of decisions. So we want that to change. And also reforming tax and fiscal systems. As I mentioned, the contributors of tax in the informal economy is largely women. But this is not the story that is narrated. This is not the story that is brought out when we speak on taxes, when we speak on fiscal systems, when we speak on budgets, and that needs to change. And the other one is promoting economies of care so that there is equitable access to resources, opportunities, and benefits. So we are not just talking about economic empowerment and end there. What about economic empowerment? How does that relate to resources for women? How does that relate to capital? How does that relate to agricultural inputs for women? How does that relate to creation of jobs? How does that relate to healthcare benefits, particularly for women and children? Then we emphasize on social protection systems, like investment in labor markets, creation of employment opportunities, and social protection services. The other is to advocate for debt cancellation and restructuring so that we do not prioritize debt repayment over education, over health, and over other social services. African governments should form a unified front in international negotiations. If Ghana is negotiating for one thing and Zambia is negotiating for another, it is a divide and conquer, and Africa will never win. And the ones that bear the brunt of that disunity are women. And so when we start speaking with the same voice and saying the same story and making the same demands, it will make a greater impact, especially if women unite. The other is to adopt policies that dismantle the patriarchal and neo-colonial structures. And I had mentioned the patriarchal cultural norms that we prioritize the comfort of men versus the basic rights of women. If a girl child is denied education, she becomes illiterate. And if she grows up illiterate, there is a high chance that she will not have access to basic human rights even as an adult. And so that is what we want to put a stop to. Then to establish robust regional institutions. How lovely would it be to have our own African IMF? How suitable would it be for our economies to have their own financial institution? This would grant African economies financial independence, to have our own currency, to negotiate contracts in our own currencies, right? And then the other one is to have Africa should assert its role as a rule maker and not as a rule taker. Once we gain the independence politically, economically, and socially from the global north and from our creditors, we are able to make the rules, assert them, and not just take them. So that is what the manifesto is about. So now I am going to ask you all to stand. I'm sure you all have, you can see those lovely purple balloons on your tables. If you could please raise them. As many as you can, but each one has to have and hold a balloon. Purple is the color that symbolizes feminism. And so what we are saying when we raise these balloons is we are symbolizing that one woman that we know that could benefit from the commitments of the Maputo Manifesto. The one woman that would know that whose life trajectory would change for the better if the commitments of the Maputo Manifesto become a reality in Africa. So I'm going to call Honorable Chabalala to help me launch the manifesto. Let's clap.
Thank you, Vanessa. Amandla. 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 Long live the Maputo Protocol, long live. Long live the Maputo Protocol, long live. Long live the African Feminist Foundations of the Maputo Protocol, long live. Long live the Gender Action Plan within the Maputo Protocol, long live. Down with misogyny in Africa, down. Yeah, you really are not an audience. You are not a thing right now. Don't know what your problem is. But you clearly have a problem. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. So let's do this again. Down with misogyny in Africa, down. Down with patriarchy in Africa, down. Down with the raping of African girls in the comfort of their mothers' homes by adults who are supposed to be looking after them, down. Down with African wars where rape is the #1 weapon, down. Down in Africa with journalists who are not reporting on gender sensitivity, gender equity, and gender equality. Down. Down with African media outlets who are rubber stamping patriarchy. Down. Amandla. Amandla. Long live the uniting and Pan-African spirit of Kwame Nkrumah. Long live. Long live the sacrificing spirit of self to the point of death and the murderous nature in which Thomas Sankara, Stephen Bantu Biko were killed and assassinated. Down. Long live the spirit of the African pre-colonial woman. Long live. Long live the spirit of the African pre-colonial woman. Long live. Long live the spirit of Ya Asantewa, of the Ashanti people who fought against the British. Long live. Long live the spirit of Nehanda Nyakasigana of Zimbabwe, who fought against British colonialism in Zimbabwe. Long live. Long live the spirit of Yenenga, the founder of the Mosi culture, Mosi language, and Mosi people. Long live. Long live the spirit of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, the symbol and icon of the anti-apartheid struggle. Long live. Long live the spirit of Njingambande of Angola, who fought against Portuguese slavery and Portuguese colonization for 75 years of an 85-year life. Long live. Long live the founding mothers of the only surviving reign kingdom in Southern Africa, Muchachi I and Muchachi II. Long live. Long live the spirit of Saronia Mango, who shape-shifted into a Black Panther to avert being force-converted into Christianity by the French and to avert being guillotined naked in front of her own people. Long live. Amandla. Amandla. Long live the spirit of the Nubian Kendake queens, one of them born with one eye closed, Amanirenas, who held Emperor Augustus to a stalemated war. Long live. It was the first time the Roman Empire ever lost a war. It was a loss for them because they'd never lost a war coming to that point. Long live the spirit of Queen Amanirenas. Long live. Rise, African women, rise. Rise, African women, rise. Forward to African males who understand that the fight against patriarchy is not only a women's fight. Forward. Forward to African males who participate in the fight to break patriarchy in Africa. Forward. Long live all the CSOs in Africa who are gender sensitive and are fighting against gender oppression. Long live. Amandla. Amandla. Viva AfCoDD, viva. Viva AfCoDD, viva. Viva AfCoDD, viva. Viva AfCoDD, 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 viva! Amandla! Amandla! I think the Maputo protocol is duly launched.
If I could have all the ladies come with me and stand with me at the stage. All the ladies, all the women that are representing the faith of this nation, all the women that are representing the girl child in their countries, all the women that are representing gender sensitive policies, please come to the front so we can launch the Maputo Manifesto. So we'll go to the gentleman. Yes. Yes.
I'm not visible, guys.
What's the problem? You're too short to see.
Sit. Sit.
Please grab a copy of your manifesto.
I think everyone has. Oh, yeah. We'll just hold them high as.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yeah. When we call your country, you shout the loudest. We will start with Zimbabwe. They are more in the room. Aluta continua simply means the struggle continues. In Zimbabwe, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. Mozambique, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. In South Africa, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. In Ghana, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. In Africa, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. In West Africa, aluta continua, aluta continua, continua. Aluta, aluta. Umso Africa, umasona sao. Umso Africa, umasona sao.
So ladies, as we leave the stage, this is what we want to do. Everyone has their own Maputo Manifesto, right? So what we want to do to show solidarity and speaking with one voice for women and gender equality is you are going to give someone else the Maputo Manifesto you are currently holding. And you are going to start with the gentleman. You are not going to keep the Maputo Manifesto to yourself as a way of committing to spread the word of gender equality and feminism. So you give someone. Let's go.
Before we give.